we are the heart of the Workstyle revolution gathered here today
Mhm.
to talk to Ashley about her story. So we've got an hour. In that time, we're going to find out a bit about Ashley. We're going to find out who she is, a bit about her background. We're going to talk about her story, which starts with the planned idea to have a sabbatical.
Mhm.
We're going to talk about what happened in advance of that, what happened during it, and what happened in the end, what she learnt. And she's got some great tips for fellow workstylers to learn from her experience, which is a fascinating one. And I think we're in for a really interesting and enjoyable hour's conversation with Ashley. So thank you all for coming, but importantly, thank you, Ashley, for volunteering your time, volunteering to share your story with us. And I know that everybody here is going to benefit from it hugely.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So we are recording. If anyone has any issues with that, please let us know separately. We'll limit the circulation accordingly. But we do want to try and share it with the Workstyle community if we possibly can, because we think there's lots to be learned and lots to be gained. So I think that covers housekeeping. I think if we were in real life, I'd be pointing to fire exits and that sort of thing. But we don't have to do that now. I'm going to assume you know where yours are. And without further ado, we'll just get into it. So I think we'll probably start with just a quick introduction. If you don't know who I am, I'm Alex Hurst. I'm a co-author of Workstyle and co-founder of the Workstyle Revolution with Lizzie Penny.
Who I am, and it's always hard to follow Alex because I'm exactly the same as him, but the other half of the pair. So it feels like we should get to know you a bit, Ashley. So do you want to just start by telling us a bit about who you are and also a bit about what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I can't think of a better audience than this one. So I'm a hiker, I'm an adventurer, I am a dog mom, full-time dog mom, an aspiring author, a career coach. I love hygge, I love airports, I love humanity, I love ice cream. I am also a B2B thought leadership consultant. So I believe in the power of personal branding. And I give a mic and a stage and a voice to leaders who are pioneering movements that matter, movements and causes that I care about. So that's a little bit about me.
Fantastic. So what is, with all of that, I mean, it sounds like I can already imagine quite a varied and busy home life and an interesting and wide-ranging work through the work that you do. What is your work style and kind of how does that fit around your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been self-employed for almost 8 years, coming up on 8 years in February. I'm 100% remote and I work wherever my laptop is. That was a strategic move, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, but it was really important for me that I planned my work around my life. So what that means, I'm a morning person. So typically I work, kind of 6 to 3 or 7 to 4. I really schedule my life around my work around my dog and also the things in my life that are really important to me that inspire connection with other people, purpose and meaning in my life. So for example, I love to surf, and that's not something that you do at 4 o'clock every day. The waves might not be there, right? So you kind of have to read the reports and make sure that there's waves and at a certain time of day. Similar things, like I had brunch on a Monday at 10:30 a.m. with my girlfriends, and I plan my work around my life because of the work that I do. It's very output centric, right? And my clients live and work all around the world. So as long as I get my work done, I can plan that around my personal goals and how I feel enriched in my life.
So inspiring, so inspiring, and so much of that echoing what we wrote about in the book as well. So what originally took you into freelancing?
Yeah, great question. This is why, the reason why is why I'm talking with you all today. I am a hardcore introvert. I'm a highly sensitive person. And when I worked in corporate America, I sat in a sales organization where recruiters were on the phone all day, and I was exhausted. It wasn't an environment that was conducive to the way I work best. And I wasn't given the opportunity to work from home the majority of the time when I asked. And I said, that's not going to work for me. So I took a leap of faith. I wanted to build my own dream, and I didn't want to wait till I was 50 or 60 years old to do that at the time. So I took a leap of faith and started On Top Social in, I believe, October of 20. Oh my gosh, I can't do math right now.
15?
2014,
2014, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I haven't looked back, and I can count on one hand. I think there's been 2 times in my, I don't know, for the folks on the call or folks listening to the recap, how many times this has happened to you as a work styler, but I would say there's been only 2 or 3 times in 7.5 years that I've thought about applying for a full-time job and going back. I love this way of working. I believe in it. And I believe that everyone should have the opportunity to have that work style if they want it.
Couldn't agree more. And I think most people who are working in a work style way or have done for a long time would agree. Certainly, it feels like we probably started our work style journey at a similar time, starting Hoxby in the early part of 2015. And I think for all of us, it feels hard to imagine going back to what traditional work was, and perhaps even a little bit more worrying to wonder about what it might be like now, knowing what we know about how to do autonomy well, and seeing it done so badly across a lot of organizations would perhaps be harder to take. But anyway, so actually, you've been doing this for a while. And at some point during the last 8 years, you decided to take a sabbatical. Now, for someone who is self-employed, and the kind of highs and lows of feast and famine nature of earning a living as a freelancer, taking a sabbatical feels like almost impossible leap, almost as impossible as going back to traditional work, frankly. So what made you want to do that? Why would you want to take a sabbatical, and kind of what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah. So I totally agree. And I want to talk a little bit about, the implications of that too. But walking the Camino in Spain was on my bucket list, number 1 on my bucket list for 7 years. And I also burnt out 3 times in a 1.5 years. And I'm sure we'll get into that, as a work styler, as someone who's self-employed, it's easy to really succumb to that rat race when you're on your own, even if that's why you left corporate in the first place, right? So this was just I had been in survival mode for way too long, and I needed a reset as a self-employed business owner. And so I decided that September of 2022 would be the year. I committed to that. But yeah, I needed a reset. I needed to nap under olive trees and not have a schedule that was dictated by time, right? To kind of just wander and feel inspired again. I was feeling really run down from my work. I wanted to inspire myself again and kind of reignite the passion of why I was doing this in the first place. And I thought that, some people go to the beach to do that, or they, take up a new hobby. And I thought, why not walk 500 miles across the top of Spain
just for fun? Perfect.
So is that how far it is? So for anyone who doesn't know, could you just give us 2 seconds on what the Camino is?
Sure. So there's several routes you can take in Spain that would achieve the Camino. And my friend and I decided to take the French route, which starts over the Pyrenees in France, and you walk across the top of Spain. I don't know how many kilometers it is, but it's about 484 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And for any of you who haven't been to northern Spain, I was shocked and in awe of how varied the landscape was and how beautiful it was. We did not have a bad view any day, which it took about 5 weeks. So it's a sabbatical for sure.
I mean, so you
Amazing.
make it sound amazing and idyllic, and certainly that part of the world is incredible, but it wasn't as simple as that, was it, Ashley? It didn't all go according to plan.
Not at all. Yeah. And I want to talk, I know we'll get into that in a second. I think, to answer the rest of Alex's question too. there's so much that goes into preparing for a sabbatical, especially when you're self-employed. And so I had to make the commitment to myself first and start talking to my friends about it to hold myself accountable. I'm going to do this thing, right? I had to start talking about it. Yeah, that's
speak it into existence. We say it all the
we
time.
talk about that loads, especially with Workstyle. You know, if you don't say it, it won't happen.
Exactly. So, and I knew that that was going to be a part of my journey. And so what I decided to do, I wanted to keep my business. So I decided I was going to find somebody to hold down the fort while I was gone. And so planning for September 2022 is when I would leave. I recruited that person in January of 2022. And so I knew that I would have the next 6 months-ish to train her. Wrote a job description, found her via LinkedIn, and we spent and she was the perfect person. And so we spent the next 6 months. I introduced her to my clients. I wrote a manual for her. I involved her in calls. I did everything I could to set her up for success. And I think, Alex, I might be jumping the gun here, but so much of it was asking Roxy how she worked best. And when does she work best? This is asynchronous work, and that works for us. I don't care that you get the work done, but here's what's important for you to hold down the fort. And this is what I expect, but also how can we set you up for success, and how can you work in a way that's meaningful to you doing this work, right? And I found she's a night person, and she's going to send me emails at midnight, and I'm not, and she doesn't expect to get back to me right away. So we had so much communication about how we work best, knowing that it was different than each other's, and finding a way that worked for us. And I have to say, she blew it out of the park in terms of what I expected from her. But more importantly, we still work together, because I found in working with her that she brought so many additional skills and expertise to the table that I had no idea that I was hiring her for. Right. And so now she's a branding consultant for me. My clients love her, and we've built a partnership out of what was just a 6-month kind of temporary thing.
I think that is just amazing, inspiring, and also I think something that we can all learn from. I think so. Lizzie and I have worked in a partnership since before we came up with the idea of Workstyle. But I think having someone that you work with regularly, or who can buddy you in a Workstyle way, is really, really valuable to helping to make Workstyle work for you. Not everyone has it, and it can be difficult to find. But if the opportunity comes along to create that, then it's something that Workstylers should approach with an open mind, I think, because, as you say, though there are functional benefits to having someone else to mesh Workstyles with and make sure you cover the workload, there's also that unseen benefit of all that deeper, rich experience and varied expertise that you can call on and bring together to increase your collective intelligence, and what you can achieve together as a pair probably would outweigh what you could achieve working on your own. So I think that's a really fantastic kind of discovery and an important element of the way we work and the way we make Workstyle work.
Yeah, Alex, and that takes a skill to be open to a different way of working based on how your colleagues work best, and knowing what questions to ask and where to adapt and how to sync up when things aren't syncing or what have you, right? It takes a skill and an open-mindedness. And I'd argue a lot of Workstylers have that, or they found a way to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to go back to Lizzie's question, so you were on sabbatical, Roxy was covering everything, and so you'd gone to Spain, and actually, just I should say that this thinking of yours predates the book, right? So you were doing this at the end of 2022 when the book came out. Actually, it probably came out while you were there. So kudos to you for already having a Workstyle mindset before you embarked on this adventure. But what happened? Tell us what happened when you got there.
Yeah, so a record number of pilgrims, that's what the hikers are called. A record number of pilgrims hit the trails in September of 2022 because it had been through the pandemic, the Pope had extended the Holy Year. So roughly 200,000 pilgrims hike it every year, and not just the French way, which is the way we took all of the routes. And they had recorded 365,000 pilgrims for that year. And we saw that manifest on the trail.
Which that I imagine completely changes the experience as well as, you know,
100%.
the organization required to make it work.
Just showing up was such a huge feat, and then it was nothing like I had read in the guidebooks. And so, for example, we saw that on the trail. On any day, there were days where I had 50 pilgrims in front of me and another 40 behind me.
Wow.
And it, like, to Link's point, as an introvert, that's my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was
surprised you didn't quit there and say, screw it, I'm going somewhere else.
Were you tempted? Were you tempted to just abandon it?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. There was one day where I was ready to go home. Yeah, for sure. So it made things really stressful. And for those of you who are unfamiliar or have heard of this before, there's the spirit of the Camino where it's meant to be spontaneous. And there's so many beds and places to stay that it's never been an issue to walk as far as you can walk, whether that's 8 miles a day or 12 or something in the middle, and then find a bed. But we had to book in advance to make sure that we had a bed at the end of the day. And that was one of the ways that we did adapt, my friend and I. But also 12 days in, we got into a small town called Belorado, and we were sitting by the river over a gin and tonic and some Spanish croquettes. And I said to my friend Stacy, I said, I can't do the Camino like this. I'm stressed. I want to go home. Like this is not what I came for. And so basically what happened is I said to myself, if I am going to stay, I need to figure out how. I need to figure out how to get what I came for, or how to get some of what I came for. And as they say, walk my own Camino. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
And so you went from a point where you basically said, I'm going to go home, to shifting your mindset to find a way to stay, but make it right for you as an HSP, a highly sensitive person, as an introvert. So how did you go about that kind of mindset shift, and what did you do differently as a result?
Yeah, I really wanted to do this thing. Like, I had committed so much of the year to this, and money, and training Roxy. And I said, I'm here. I want something out of this. And I have to remember why I came here in the first place. Right. And I know we'll talk about that, but I think we get so caught up in our goal of doing the thing that we forget why we're doing it. And so I came there and I said, okay, well, if I'm going to be, if I'm going to be surrounded by all these people, where are there opportunities where I can find solace? Can I walk in them? I decided I started to walk in the morning before sunrise. I booked my beds in advance, sometimes 6 days in advance, so that I didn't have to wake up and rush through the day. And, I think that a huge part of it is that I really had to adapt, but I had invested too much and I wanted this for myself. And so I had to be open to it looking differently than what I had planned.
Which, when you've been building up something for so long and you think you know what's going to happen, requires real dynamism and tenacity.
I appreciate you saying that. And I mean, I'm going to get to this, but as a work styler, whether you're a freelancer or self-employed, however you identify and classify yourself, whether you are innately wired with that skill or you have to find a way to go get it, I value that so highly, and I honor that in all of you. And for the folks that are going to be, listening to this call afterwards, it's a skill, and I'd argue it's one of our best assets to be able to do that. I was in a foreign country. I had to navigate the unknown. I was incredibly stressed and frustrated, but I wasn't going to give it up. I trusted too much.
I think this is a really insightful narrative in that I feel like we all kind of experience a bit of this when we feel frustration, when we can't even meet our kind of basic work style goals. So you've created an expectation of what you want to achieve, what you want this experience to be like, in the same way as we create an expectation of what we want our lives to be like, and for our work to be like, when we're doing it with our own autonomy. And when things come along and kind of crush that, change that, what that idealized work style life is, it can be really hard to adjust. And actually, you almost take it more personally, because you've invested your own time and energy into creating this world for yourself that, you know, a lot of other people wouldn't have the tenacity to do, nor the bravery to do, nor the confidence. So it almost hits twice as hard when things don't go well and you have to adjust your own expectation. But I guess also, really, it doesn't necessarily have to be that it's a lower expectation, more of a reframing of what you're getting. So you're still, so for you, was it a case of, did you feel like you were reframing your experience on the Camino, Ashley, or did you feel like you were doing a kind of lesser version of what you wanted to do?
That's a really good question. And Lizzie, I know you want to chime in here. I think it was a little bit of both. I've learned a few things along the way of having my own business for 7 years, right? I've gotten pretty okay with adapting when things don't go as planned. But let me tell you a story, Alex, about this. So about 2 weeks in, to answer your question, 2 weeks in, my friend had gotten some blisters. We had to maybe walk less number of miles on any particular day. So we didn't get as far on one particular day as we had mapped out in order to finish this thing and to walk every single step, right? And so about 2 weeks in, I was doing the math when, my friend got a blister and she was tired and we had to change some things up. And I was sitting after dinner doing the math and I said, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to walk every single step by the time I'm supposed to head home. And I didn't have a flight back, but I told my clients I'd be back mid-October. And that gutted me, because it was like, I had told myself, I needed this reset. I wanted to nap under olive trees, and just wander and be simplified to what I could carry on my back. But when I got to the heart of it and I realized I wasn't going to be able to walk every single step, I only realized at that time how, like, what I really wanted, I got caught up in the expectation that I was going to achieve this in a particular way. And for those of you listening and afterwards, a lot of work stylers like me, I'm vigilant in my planning. I am hyper organized and I don't like messy. Right? And I set out to do the thing in this particular way, and I was going to do that. And then circumstances in and outside of my control made me realize that I wasn't going to achieve it in the way that I had set out. And I'm not good at that. I'm not. That's not a strength I possess, but it was forcing me to be open to doing the thing and achieving the outcome in a different way, and that could be okay, right? So to answer your question, Alex, like when I initially looked at this experience and that I was only going to be able to walk 275 miles out of the 500, which is what I walked, and that's a huge win. At that time, in that moment after dinner, I felt like that was going to be a lesser version of the experience I came for. And it took me some massaging and some days after and some processing to say, okay, well, I'm going to make this experience great and it's going to have to look different. And I did. And so I was able to, give myself a picnic on one day and a hike before sunrise another day, which was really great, by the way. And I got a lot of what I came for after that.
I think that the thing that really resonates with me is I'm like you, I'm a planner. I like things to go according to plan. Alex and I have spent 8, 9, 10 years doing this, and things have never gone according to plan. And Alex thrives in change, and I find it destabilizing. I always find a way, like you did, to pick back up and to see what we can do, but I find that comes with its own challenges. But the thing that we always do whenever something throws us off course, as it regularly does, you know, this hasn't been a path that's run smoothly, is we come back to why we're here in the first place. You know, it's one of the things I love most about Alex is he always brings us back to what, like, why are we here? Like, Lizzie, what's the thing that means that we're here? And that always grounds me again. And I know that you might have thought your why was walking the whole Camino, but I'm confident it wasn't. That was just the achievement you thought you would get to. The why, I'm sure, was something very different. Did you come back to that and analyze that as part of that realization to get comfortable with the fact that you were only going to walk 250 miles instead of 500, which to me sounds like a massive amount?
Like, what was I thinking? Like, that's a win. So here's what's funny. I had brought a journal with me so that I could write down my experiences and my stories. And before I left, I put a sticky note on the first page about why I was walking. And it had nothing to do with miles at all, right? And so I reverted back to that in that time of stress, and said, okay, well, I can, you know, create a picnic for myself. I can book my bed so that I can get up and walk and not have to worry. So I found that after that night, I was reverting back to that sticky note a lot more. And it helped so much because I was creating different experiences for myself for the rest of the trip. And I ended up booking a train and I cut off 120 miles of the experience. And I reset.
That answers Link's question about was it cheaper the experience if you go by bike?
So it's funny, the bikes.
Train with some wine. No one's faulting you for that.
She's traveled the Camino.
Only 275 miles.
Exactly. And what's interesting about the Camino, and we could talk about this as opposed to other through hikes, it can be a very, for lack of a better word, bougie experience if you want it to be. Right? You don't have to, you can rough it as much or as little as you want to. So I took a train, I think it was to Lyon in Spain, and my friend was leaving to go home. So I was going to finish the rest of the Camino on my own at that point anyway. So I took a train, I spent an extra day in a hotel, got a nice hot shower and regrouped. And to answer your question, Lizzie, that was a huge part of my shift in mindset. And I said, okay, my Camino is starting again halfway through, for the last 150 or 200 miles, whatever it was. And it's amazing what a hot shower and some, you know, a nice bed can do for your mental health after that. Yeah.
Gosh, absolutely.
Wow.
So let's just take a step back. So you're still on sabbatical though, right? So are you feeling at this point like you're getting what you wanted from your sabbatical? So having reframed, so I imagine let's call it the first chapter, was you're probably feeling like this isn't why I took why I'm here, it's not why I invested all that time to set this up. When you reframed it to be more about your purpose and why you were doing it, did that help you? Did you feel like you were still getting the value from having taken a sabbatical? Did you have any challenges with that psychologically? Was it hard to rationalize taking that time off, or were you at peace with that?
Yeah, I didn't feel any doubt about taking a sabbatical. I know I needed it. It was a long time coming, right? And we deserve that. We work hard. We deserve that. And so at no point did I have doubts that I, just because I didn't get what I originally came for, that I didn't deserve to be there, or that it wasn't going to be what I thought it was going to be. But the real sort of, it took me the rest of the Camino to process, and even after I got back, to process what the real wins were and what I really got out of it. It's the famous Rolling Stones song. Sometimes you don't get what you want, but you get what you need, right? That sums up the whole entire experience. And I'm writing a book about some of my experiences on the Camino now. And it's been it's been 8 months since I got back, and only really, in the last couple of months have I realized what I got out of the experience on the Camino. So it took some time to really process what had happened and where the shifts in mindset happened. And I've been okay at adapting to change. But for example, I feel like I'm a little bit better at it, but I also am a lot better at being okay with the unknown and being okay with that stage of limbo. And I'll give you a perfect example. So I started with a new client in January. It's a pretty big contract. We had set out to achieve certain deliverables, and we got halfway through, probably in March or April, after I stepped in with both feet, and I said, wow, we really need to change things up, because the leaders that I was supporting, they were at a different stage of our work together than I thought. And so we had to audible. And so we took a step back and said, okay, we're going to do a workshop series and do some education to support these leaders instead. And I think before the Camino, I wouldn't have been as open to that, and to proactively say, okay, things need to look differently. We need to change our contract up so that our leaders, the leaders that I'm supporting, get what they are paying for and the investment that they've made, right? So I think the Camino really helped me be okay with sitting in that unknown for a while, and then like massaging things and processing things to say, okay, it needs to look differently so that we get a positive outcome.
And it's interesting you say outcome there, because the thing I was just thinking is that it's about shifting from just an output mindset to an outcome mindset, which is that, yes, you are contracted to deliver something, but actually following that path resolutely would have got you to a different outcome from the one that you knew the client was hoping for.
Are you seeing the pattern here? Right. A through F, and that's the only way we're going to deliver this, right? And so it's causing me to think about like being open to a different process so that the outcome is positive for me, for the leaders I support, for my clients, for whoever I'm working with. Yeah.
And I just want to take you back to the very fact that you had a sabbatical at all, because I think this is really interesting from a work style perspective, because a lot of people, I think, when you set your own work style, one of the challenges we often hear about is boundary setting. We talk about set, project, and respecting your work style, and that often it's easier to respect when you've got someone who's either working with you as a partner or a work style buddy. But I would say that a lot of people who are work stylers, who are also freelancers, just wouldn't even consider taking a sabbatical because it feels too insecure. And also, they feel like they've got their own work style anyway. So if they've got their own work style, why should they need a sabbatical as much? It feels something that goes with, to a lot of people, it feels like something that goes with traditional employment. What are your views on that? What would you say to other people who are thinking, yeah, but I can't justify a sabbatical because I'm a freelance?
Right. I love this. I feel like we could have a whole conversation on this. I think two things to respond to you. Number one is clearly my work style wasn't working if I had to take a sabbatical, right? So it caused me to think about how I need to switch things up so that I don't need a vacation from being a freelancer, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. And then number two is I see this so much, especially starting a business in 2016 and being surrounded by other entrepreneurs and consultants who felt that they didn't deserve time off, right? Because I've got this work style and I'm an entrepreneur, I'm building a business. That needs to be my number one focus. And I have such a different view about that now. So I think, a lot of us left the corporate world to either to build something or because we wanted a different way of working. But it's easy to succumb back into that rat race. It's so easy. It's easy for me, at least. And so I think if I can generalize, haven't done a great job at, maybe some work stylers haven't done a great job about like feeling like we deserve time off because we work in this way. I'd argue whoever you are, it doesn't matter if you're self-employed or a freelancer or work for somebody else or what your identification is, we deserve the same perks and benefits that a salary W-2 employee has. And I'd argue even more because of all the hats we have to juggle, right? So I don't know if the answer is how you can build this into your work style, or if it's I work this way, and I take time off when I need to, and I set boundaries, but also I deserve vacation, and I want a sabbatical, and I deserve to take one, right? It doesn't really matter, but it's having the self-awareness to know how you work best and when, and giving yourself permission to pursue your personal goals too.
I think that's very true, and it makes you better at your work if you do that, because you are happier in your life. You know, Alex and I have talked before about this morning. I normally start work at 10:30, but the kitchen was a complete state, and there were a couple of life admin things that were just in my mind. So I just thought, I'm going to do those things, and then I can just know that I'm dedicated to work. And I think that actually sometimes we don't put enough emphasis on life and the value of prioritizing that, and what we can then bring to work as a result of having prioritized life first. Which,
Yeah,
Alex, I'm sure was what you're about to say.
Yeah, no, same thing. Yeah, exactly. We this is coming up quite a bit, this idea that we need to place value on our non-working time. And if we're clear about why we're doing something, and we understand the value that we're going to get from it, then it helps us to rationalize it and to take that kind of leap of faith. Actually, something that you're not unfamiliar with. So you've taken a leap of faith to go freelance, and then taken another leap of faith to go on sabbatical, and then another in the way that you kind of adjusted along the way. And I think you're kind of the thing, you know, your why and the thing that motivates you through that is really important, as Liz has just said. But it's the thing that helps you go through those tricky times and turn those tricky times into growth opportunities. And I don't want to sound like a lifestyle coach, but when we're in those moments of challenge is when we learn the most about ourselves, and we develop the confidence to take a different angle, or to treat it differently when it happens next time. A bit like you were just talking about in your example.
Yeah,
So,
I'm still getting benefits from my experience on the Camino, but none of them were the ones I had planned, right? That I expected.
Isn't such is life. Such is
yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Alex, you were going to go.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So, what now? So, you know, what's your plans for the future? What's your plans for your work style off the back of all this?
Yeah, I still need to make some adjustments to my work style, but I'd argue we all should, and probably need to, as things in our lives change, right? As we build our work around our lives, that's needs a constant audit, I would argue, right? For me, I'm actually at a crossroads at my business right now. I'm 7.5 years in. I feel like in some ways I've really plateaued in the spaces that I've been in. And I'm at a point still. I mean, you'll probably see this about me. I'm looking for new ways to feel inspired yet again. That's so important to the work I do. It's clearly that reigniting happens a lot, and I seek that out. And so I am looking for new ways to find meaning and purpose in my work right now. The start of that is having this conversation and being with you, Alex, and Lizzie, and the team. There's almost nothing that I feel more passionate about than all people being able to have the freedom to work when, where, and how they work best, and knowing what that looks like for them at an individual level, and having that self-awareness and that autonomy to go out and achieve that. And so, yeah, so I'm shaving Untapped Social back down to lift it back up again, and being open to what that looks like. It's just who I am. I get bored easily. I need my work to have meaning, and I need my life to have meaning. And so I'm being called to do that and to focus on that right now.
I think that's so inspiring, and it's also really inspiring to just hear you talking so openly about it being a journey, because I think a lot of people think that for Alex and I, you get a work style and then that's it, and it certainly isn't like that for anyone. You know, work style is a philosophy. It's a continuous personal challenge and personal journey, and having your own work style is the freedom to choose. But your circumstances change, you change in yourself, everything changes over time. And so really what that means is constant reevaluation, which I think is both hugely powerful, but also can sometimes be almost unbounded. Whereas when you work for someone else, they're mandating where you've got to be and when, but you have those parameters. And I think sometimes we underestimate the challenges that come with not having those parameters. And for instance, for you, Ashley, learning what is the right work style to make sure that you definitely don't go through that burnout again. You know, you were your own boss when that happened, and you're your own boss now. So you get to choose, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an easy journey.
Right. Well said. And I'd argue too, Lizzie, so I know so much of us want meaning in our work, and we want to feel like our work has purpose. Knowing and having your own work style is paramount to achieving that. Right. And I don't want to lose sight of that. I think there's a lot of merit and value in knowing that.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, completely agree with that. There are going to be some people who are going to tune in on demand. Hopefully they're going to watch all of this brilliant conversation. But they might not. They might just skip to this last bit because this is going to be the bit where I ask you, can you share 3 things from your experience that every work styler should know? And we might include these in the Slack message, so they may not even watch this back, but more fool them. Ashley, so what do you reckon? 3 things. Let's try and boil it down to 3 big.
Yeah, of course. And I did write these down because I believe they're so important.
Okay.
So if you see me looking at my notes, so be open to a different outcome, one that could be even better than you expected, right? We put so much strong expectation on our work, you know, to fulfill us or for a specific outcome. We put so much expectation on the goals for a project or a contract or our work, but that can often lead us to our downfall, right? So be open to things working out differently than you planned. And I do mean working out for you. Number 2, again, I think so many of us left the corporate world to escape the hustle and the rat race, and it's so easy to get sucked back in. So I think takeaway number 2 is there's alternative ways to achieving your goals and building your work around your life. And it's really important to tap in and figure out what those alternative ways of achieving your goals can look like for you based on your work style, right? And then number 3, this one really hits home for me. For all of you on the call and all of you who will listen to the recap, don't ever underestimate the skills and abilities that made you a work styler in the first place, whether you're a freelancer or self-employed or 100% remote, whatever it is. So whether, you know, I think I was born innately, like I'm innately wired to be resourceful. I had to be from a young age. Whether folks are innately wired to be resourceful or to be a self-starter, or at some point along the way, you had to figure out how to have those skill sets in order to work this way. That's your most valuable asset are those skills that made you a work styler in the first place. And so, you know, that helps you in pitching to a prospective client or how you achieve an outcome for a project. Those skills should be celebrated so much more than they are. And I honor and value and see all those qualities in all of you.
And I think that's so inspiring. And that is what we created this community for, is for supporting each other, for sharing our stories, for picking each other up when we're down, and for helping each other on this messy journey that is life and work style. You know, it is imperfect, but it's through sharing our stories that we can learn from each other.
Well said. Well said.
Definitely. And I think captured by your story, Ashley, as well, you know, I think sometimes when things don't go according to plan, we want to kind of fix them there and then and move on, when actually something you just got to give things time. And I think, you know, Workstyle is a bit like that in looking at the longer term and kind of rationalizing the value of being able to fit work around life over a longer period of time, and using that perspective to help you kind of ride the unpredictability of life that comes along the way as well.
Well, yeah, and that takes patience and trust and a little bit of faith, right? And neither of those things I really have. So, like,
so it's remarkable.
And yet,
Well admitted.
I call
remarkable.
BS. Yeah,
Still you're here. Still you're here.
I want a big life. I have big goals. I have no time for that, right? But I've noticed in flexing those muscles how valuable and they've been for my journey. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Good.
Ashley, thank you so much. It's been just so inspiring and enjoyable to talk to you and to hear about everything you've done. And we've got kind of 5 minutes left. If it's okay with you, Ashley, I'd like to just ask if anyone's got any questions. Anybody who's here, would anyone like to ask anything of Ashley?
So I've got a question.
Go for it.
There are some amazing films about the Camino. I'm sure you've seen all of them. In the film they make of your book, who's going to play you?
Great
You
question.
are, Eleanor, you are.
At the moment I can't walk, so that's...
Yeah, I was going to say, she can't even go to the kitchen,
brilliant.
let alone walk the Camino.
I don't know, it's a great question. Yeah, we'll see. I got to finish the book first. Great question.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
great question. I wondered this for a while now, Ashley. As a work styler, there's an element about having control because it's your own space, right? It's your own work and you're independent. What was it like to feel as though you had no control while you were on this sabbatical? You were out there, you have no control over the people, you have a little bit of control where you're going to stay, but the spontaneity is gone. Like, what did that do for you psychologically?
It was awful. So awful. It triggered me. I have a problem with control. I need to have it. And I see what not having control. I see the ways that it has really benefited me when I've been forced to deal with that. I struggle with it more than anything else in my life. I really do. So I appreciate you asking that. I haven't figured it out yet, but being on this experience, it gave me some confidence that I can sit in the unknown for a little teensy bit longer than normal, but I struggle with it so much, Link. Yeah, I appreciate you asking.
Very good question. Very good question. Nikki.
Yeah, Ashley, you obviously have a huge amount of self-awareness and reflective capability and intentionality about what you do. But you were on this journey for a section of it with somebody else, and that somebody else was part of the reason why it didn't go quite according to plan. How did you manage that dynamic when you were sort of sorting through this in your head?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate that. So Stacy went, well, she's one of my best friends and my landlord. She went with me for the first 2.5 weeks, and then she left to go home. And so I had the second, 2.5 weeks on my own. So I knew that I was going to be walking the second half by myself. And I need a lot of solitude. So I looked forward to that, but the dynamic definitely was different. Stacy and I also travel really well together. So it wasn't as difficult as if with someone like I didn't know as well, or if they were like, yeah, I want to come on this trip. And I'm like, sure. It wasn't like that. We had traveled together before. So we had great chemistry. We had great communication. If she was like, I can't walk as far tomorrow as you can. And so we'd adapt. So knowing that I was going to be walking the second half of the Camino myself, knew that I could anticipate and look forward to that, but enjoy the time I had with her from the beginning. But I think there's so much to be said about a partner where you're having this incredibly intimate experience with on the trail, right? Like quarters are close. We were in bunk beds. We're doing this huge thing together. It definitely requires a lot of self-awareness and a lot of communication to make sure that I was still getting what I came for out of the experience, even doing it with somebody else. She had also communicated to me in the beginning, like that she didn't have any expectations for this experience and that she was just along for the ride, right? And I said, three months after I got back, I said, I could have taken a page from your book a little early on.
But this
By
is
the
all
way,
about
that's
your
good.
walk style, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Do you
how
know,
long have you been waiting?
Eleanor, I've written that down earlier, and I was thinking I'm going to use that when I'm in my clothes, but you've just done it.
Sorry.
That is
Alex,
so funny. You're the telepathy.
Alex says 2 minutes left. Give us your style clothes.
Go for it,
just
Alex. Bring us home.
Springer's final thoughts. Look, I just want to say, Ashley, thank you so much for taking time to share your story. Thank you, everyone else, for coming, spending your Friday with us. Link, I'm sure it's very early where you are. Really appreciate you coming along as well. And look, I think, it's been a great chat. Hopefully you've learned something. The idea for this was Ashley's, and we talked about it a little bit because we've done Workstyle story interviews before. We want to understand whether this is valuable. So let us know your thoughts, either publicly or privately, about how you found the session so that we can understand where the value is, what to do next time, how to build this out into something that's useful and meaningful for everybody in the Workstyle community. But thank you is kind of the last thing to say, really. And Eleanor, I'm going to give you full credit for Workstyle.
Workstyle.
Changing your walk style when life throws you curveballs.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you very, very much indeed.
The other thing that I would just add is that the why that Alex and I always come back to in times of change is this. This is what we always come back to, that however much we're trying to change the world, ultimately it's the individual stories and the individual lives that really motivate both of us and keep us going. So thank you so much. This has been so inspiring.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, guys.